Welcome, Dracuphiles, to Sundays with Dracula. Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will. This is chapter 14 of Sundays with Dracula. I am Edward G. Pettit of The Rosenbach in Philadelphia, the home of Bram Stoker's notes for Dracula. Over 100 pages of outlines, early plot ideas, and research notes compiled over the 7 years that that Stoker developed and wrote the book. It is an extraordinary record of the conception and development of a novel. We will definitely see something from Stoker's notes today. And joining me today as co-host is musician, Dracula collector, and I think officially now the music director of Sundays with Dracula, Tucker Christine. Hello, Tucker.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
I am great, thank you. I'm so excited to talk about this with you today, and we'll hit and I want to hear about the new edition of Dracula that you just picked up. That sounds really cool.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Good. And I look forward to delving into the chapter with you, because that's what we do here on Sundays with Dracula. We illuminate, elucidate, explicate Bram Stoker's novel about bloodsuckers in the 1890s, one chapter at a time for 27 weeks. Co-hosts join me each week to create a kind of conversational annotation of the entire novel. Bram Stoker's notes for Dracula are just one of the many gems of the Rosenbach's collections. And while we're all still in pandemic stay-at-home mode, you can go online, you can see some of our collections guides, you can go to our gallery gateways of past exhibitions. There's going to be some gallery gateways and future exhibitions coming up soon too. Other virtual programs and courses that we're creating. My Read the Blood, the Dracula course, Read the Blood of Dracula course, did I say all that? Starts on Tuesday, August 18th. That's the latest course that's available right now. More coming soon. And there's also a really cool program that I thought I'd tell you guys about today called it's a virtual behind the bookcase called Golden Cross, Artifacts of Spanish Imperialism in the Western Hemisphere. And let me share that with you. That looks like a really cool program that our wonderful Alexander Ames has put together at the Rosenbach. And it is find my notes here. Yeah. The Rosenbach is home to a collection of manuscripts and books from the 1500s and 1600s that record the conquest of Mexico. And in this Behind the Bookcase tour, we will study historic illuminated manuscripts and meet the people who populated the Spanish Empire. This is a free program. It is on August 21st at 12:30 in the afternoon. And if you'd like to go, you just go to the website here and register. You can also click on the support tab on our website. Help donate to the Rosenbach. Any amount helps. Join the Dracula Club. At the mid-break today, I'll talk about the Dracula Club and, of course, our brand new after show called Monday Drac Chat, which will begin tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's an after show, but it's not right after this. I mean, I don't know if I could go a whole nother hour. Well, I could go a whole nother hour. But I've chosen not to. I'm afraid the audience won't want to go a whole nother hour after the show. So we're doing that on Monday nights now. Remember, during the show today, if you're watching live on Zoom, you can use the chat amongst yourselves. I absolutely love it. That's the thing that has inspired the new Monday Drac Chat show. It's such an extraordinary group of people on there. And so you can do that. If you have a question for Tucker or I, if you want us to see something during the show, put it in the Q&A box and we'll be able to see that. And remember, when you're on the chat, to put the setting to all panelists and attendees. The default is just all panelists. So I've seen people posting on there on chat thinking they're talking to everybody, and they're not. So it'll only go to everyone if it's all panelists and attendees. Tucker, what is new with you, sir?
A lot, actually, Ed. You
tell me.
you alluded to it earlier, but I wrote a new song.
You did?
I did.
I was going to mention it later. We're going to unveil a new Pleated Gazelle song for the Monday Drac chat.
That was a 24-hour whirlwind when you asked me to do
blasted through that. I asked you to do that, and I was like, I'm so grateful. I think you know that, how grateful I am that you invest in this, as much as you do. And I'm thinking, like, I mean, I can't ask you to put a song together, this weekend, and you did.
Well, I think I work best under a deadline. So.
Oh, good. All right. Well, I'll say that from now on. So.
Then I've also the first week we talked about how I'm working on an album of covers of Dracula music from the movies.
Yeah.
I've finished another 2 songs for that.
Ooh.
So I've got probably about 4 more to go.
All right.
I gave myself the daunting task of doing a Philip Glass song, so that's really holding me back because I kind of lack the skill for it right now.
What's that from?
He did a soundtrack for a re-release of the 31, Bela Lugosi.
Oh, I do remember that now. Yes, he did.
And it is awesome, but it is difficult. It is very difficult.
Which 2 do you have done now?
I have the theme for the new one.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a song called Vampire Hunters from Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Cool. All right. So it'll be a whole album of music inspired by, or are they covers of?
No, they're actual covers. They're actual covers, rock band covers of classical pieces, really.
That's awesome. All righty. Well, I look forward to that. Hopefully, well, your deadline is November 8th, right? Like, like if you could get it done in the stretch of Sundays with Dracula, it would help.
I was working on it before you asked me to do this, and I had given myself a deadline of Halloween. I don't know that I'm making that.
All right. Well,
my deadline is to have it done before I die. How's that?
Well, there's an audience here who'd be interested. I know that. So, what else is new? You got a new book?
I got a new Armed Services edition of Dracula. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Armed Services editions.
You want to explain a little bit about what they are?
So they were put out for the soldiers during World War II, and they look like digests, but they are complete novels. I don't know if you can see that.
And they're designed horizontally to open up. Was that?
Most of them are, not all of them, but most of them are.
Do we know why they came up with that design? Is it easier to hold in one hand or something? Or?
I think I knew at one time, but I don't remember. I've been looking for this book for so long that the history of it I really don't remember. I had always, as a collector, I always want a first edition, a first printing, and they're really, really hard to come by because the first printing of these was done in 1944 when the war was still going on. And the second printing was done in 1947. Really wasn't much battle going on. It was more rebuilding at that point, and the second printings are in much better condition. But this is in pristine condition. It's awesome, and I couldn't pass it up, even though it's a second.
Hold the cover up again. Give a nice long shot of it so we can really see that. I love that illustration, and they all have this design where there's like a book on it with a book cover in that. A book design, and that's just made up, right? Like
I've never seen that cover anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't think that cover exists. So that is absolutely fascinating. I'm also fascinated with the fact that they thought, oh yeah, the soldiers want to read Dracula while they're out waiting for battle. Really? Is that the book they want to read?
Well, they did all the classics, really, from what I can tell.
Awesome. And they're hard to find as, in great condition.
Oh yeah, because they all went overseas, Mm-hmm. They all got passed around, put in people's duffel bags.
I'll have to check. How's the text in that? Is the text straight across the page horizontally, or is it in two little columns?
I'll show you.
Because I can't recall looking at one right now how the text is lined up on that page.
It's 2 columns.
Oh, it is 2 columns. Yeah.
Yep. And it's real tiny.
Yeah. I just wonder why they designed them horizontally like that. There's got to be some practical reason. Maybe it's just easier. I always thought maybe it was easier to hold in one hand. Maybe you can get more light on the page if it's horizontally like that, because more of it you can kind of expose, and it's easier to see. because who knows where you have to read those things.
So there is an article online about the history of them that may have it in there, and it pops up pretty early if you Google it. So
cool. All righty. Well, that is a great find. I'm so happy you have another Dracula book in your collection. Do you think you'll ever read it?
No, because
No.
I want it to stay in the condition that it's in.
Okay.
I actually ordered a clamshell box for it that should be here next week.
Oh, nice. Good. I'm always tempted to read, and I have. Any book that I have that's a little bit rare, I like to know that I have read it. I like to know that I've gone through it and done it. But I don't collect like you do. So
yeah,
that I look at other people's collections or handle the collections at the Rosenbach. That's usually what I do. What are you drinking today?
I am starting with the one I talked about last time. It is a Dutch single malt.
Mm-hmm.
Called Millstone. I was able to find a place that would import it for me because it's not available in America.
Ooh, and I'm sure in PA really hard. Draconian PA. Well, PA liquor laws have been improved in the last, decade or a little more than that now. So
they're getting there, but they're still behind. And then my second one I refill will be Old Par Blended.
Little
tie into
that. Well, I have a new cocktail today. It's very red. It is gin. It's 2 ounces of gin, 2 ounces of Aperol. I don't know if anybody drinks Aperol. I really like Aperol. It's an aperitivo from Italy, and usually you make an Aperol spritzer, and you make it with Prosecco, and that's what's in here too. So it's gin, Aperol. And then I top it off with Prosecco, and then I threw a shot. Actually, I threw a little pour of port in there, and then it needed more. I actually had to adjust it before the show, and it needed a little more port, needed a little more Aperol. I think a little Campari might go better. I think this drink might be better with Campari, but as it is now, it's very sweet, and that kind of goes with this. And I call this drink the Dazzle. So in honor of Van Helsing and his ridiculous "I'm a Dazzle," I am Dazzle, he says, and he says it more than once, but he says it about meaning Mina too. And I think she is such a, and he talks about it as we'll hit today. She's such a light in this novel that he's kind of dazzled by her. And while he may be a bit patronizing about it, as of course he is, it's also true that she is an extraordinary character in there. So this is the Dazzle in honor of both Van Helsing and Mina. Our special guests coming up next week's show. No, in 2 weeks we will have David Skal on the program. He is the author of Something in the Blood, the biography of Dracula, or the biography of Bram Stoker, which just came out a few years ago. He'll be on for chapter 16 on August 23rd. And the Rosenbach's librarian, our own Elizabeth Fuller, will be on the show as a special guest for chapter 17, the week after David is here, on August 30th. I'm not sure if Elizabeth is in the audience today. She has been the last couple. She is in the audience. You can say hi to everybody on the chat, Elizabeth. Elizabeth will be here on... what I just say, August 30th for chapter 17. She's also going to share some details about 2 new vampire-themed books recently acquired by the Rosenbach. And Elizabeth, if you didn't know you were sharing those details, I just revealed it now. I'm sorry. I was emailing our curator at the Rosenbach about it, and I'm not sure if I looped Elizabeth in yet, that would be a perfect time to, let people know about these 2 new books that we have for the collection that are Dracula and vampire related. So a little teaser, August 30th, we will talk about that. Kim Newman will be here next month, author of Anno Dracula, on September 27th for chapter 22. Sir Christopher Frayling will finish up with the last chapter of the novel, chapter 27, on November 8th. I still don't have dates for a couple other special guests that I hope to have soon. And I asked people last week in the chat to write where you're listening from, and I was just amazed at how how many places we have listeners from. And the states in the United States, the states here in the U.S., people are watching us live on Zoom. We're last week from Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Tennessee, New York, Missouri, New Jersey, Alabama, Virginia, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. And outside the country, there was somebody from Toronto, Canada, Hamburg, Germany, Koch, Denmark. I think that's how you say it, in Denmark, Sydney, Australia, and the Isle of Wight in Great Britain. So thank you all for watching it. I mean, who knows how many people from other U.S. states and other countries are watching this show on the replay on Facebook and the replay on our website. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Are you ready? We're just going to jump right into it today.
Sounds good.
Talk about chapter 14 of Dracula. When last we met, the end of chapter 13, when last we met, there was a newspaper account of a strange woman whom the children were calling the Bloofer Lady, who was luring away these children, and then the children would return looking emaciated and weak, and they would have wounds on their necks. So, you know, dun, 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 end of the chapter. And that was all from, well, that was in the Westminster Gazette, and before that it was Seward talking, and from his journal. I think he finished his journal before that, right? He says, "I'm done writing in this journal. I'm never going to write in it again," because he thought that it was over, like he thought that this major incident in his life was over, which is Lucy's death. So we start chapter 14 with Mina Harker's journal, and she's Jonathan. She says, this is 23 September, and Jonathan is better after a bad night. And she's referring to in the previous chapter how he had seen Dracula on the street and looking young, and then and he gets frantic about it, and then they sit on a bench and he can't. Oh, it's him, and he's younger, and then he falls asleep and he wakes up and doesn't remember anything. So he's clearly, you know, suffering from, you know, some kind of, you know, PTSD, some major trauma has happened in his life, and his mind is trying to block it out. But he's better now after a bad night. Mina says, "I'm so glad that he has plenty of work to do, for that keeps his mind off of terrible things. He's not now weighed down with the responsibility of his new position, in that Peter Hawkins, his boss, has just died, and that Jonathan has taken over the firm. I knew he would be true to himself, and now how proud I am to see Jonathan rising to the height of his advancement and keeping pace in all ways with the duties that come upon him. And then my household work is all done, so I shall take his foreign journal," she calls it, "and lock myself up in my room and read it." It says a little bit about Jonathan and who he is, and who Mina is too, but her impression of Jonathan is, I think, the impression that we've always gotten from him, that he is like the upright, hardworking, middle-class man doing his duty, like, which is his job. His duty is his, you know, his legal job, the solicitor's work that he has to do. And Tucker, this reminded me of earlier in the book when he's in the count. He's with the count in the castle. Even after he begins to notice things are strange, he feels threatened, he still diligently goes on with his work for the count, doesn't he?
Yeah, and that feels dopey in the beginning, but I think this chapter starts to bring that around, and he kind of explains it to Van Helsing later. Is like he was disoriented, he was doubting himself, and his work was the only thing that he thought would keep him straight. And I think that justification, like I said, I think it makes you like him more in this chapter than in the previous chapters.
Jonathan is definitely someone that I joke about in the beginning and the first few chapters, make fun of him, and he doesn't. And I think in a sense I'm being set up for that, because I think Stoker puts him in a position where he is supposed to be heroic, or the usual, you know, kind of Victorian male is supposed to be heroic in those situations, and he's completely defeated by it, except for the escape. I mean, scaling down a castle wall over a cliff, you know, with I don't know how many hundreds of feet drop that is, took a lot of courage. and strength actually to do, and he does it twice. And then he does it twice. He climbs down, and then the third time because he escapes that way. So, but for the most part, it's easy to, he's with the vampire women. It's easy to joke about him. But from here on, as it goes on, I think he does take on a much stronger role. I think he's heroic. I think he is. I think he's necessary to this group.
Absolutely.
What he knows.
And being the lawyer, he's got all the ins when they start doing all the investigation and all.
But I think a passage like this also reminds us too of his kind of class position in society. And now as he's not Arthur, who's got the lordship. Now he's Lord Godalming, or Quincy, who's this super rich adventurer guy. Even Seward is a professional. Seward's also kind of in Jonathan's class, I think, as well, as a middle class, and he's got to work for it. But Jonathan more so than the others, and if he wants to make it in life, he's just got to keep working hard to do it, and he does it. And Mina notices it, and now she talks about how she's going to read his foreign journal. I think that's an interesting way that she's phrased it there. It's his journal in his foreign lands that he just took in this foreign country, but it's also there's a strange foreignness, otherness to what she understands his experience was. She said, and then she reads it, and then we just get lock myself in my room and read it, and we get an ellipsis ... like which is interesting because he uses that in the second passage here too. And does he use that anywhere else in this novel? I didn't check and look through, but it's an odd thing to do. And if she's writing in shorthand, is it she shorthand than an ellipsis, or are we supposed to take this as an editor? I don't know. Perhaps this could be edited. That's unlikely. It doesn't read that way that it's edited, where she takes things out. But it seems that we want to know that there's a break here. But here the break happens, and it's the next day. And she tells us, I hadn't the heart to write last night. That terrible record of Jonathan's upset me so. That she's so moved by it that she couldn't even write again in her journal about it. Somebody asked a question here. Jennifer asked a question back to duty and obligation. There is such a theme of duty, obligation, and must in all caps, and must in the novel. Was that something that was important to Victorian society? Is it a literary device of Gothic writing? I don't think it's a Gothic trope at all. I think it is a very much a Victorian thing. It is an example of the Victorian world, of the Victorian kind of invading that Gothic world, that when you write a Gothic novel in the Victorian age and set it amongst these kinds of people, that this is the way they're going to behave, this is what they're going to think about. I think in some Gothic novels, especially because they frequently harken back to the Middle Ages, I think you get more of a reference to a kind of chivalric code in those. And not that you don't get that in this, because that has really made a comeback. The whole cult of chivalry and honor comes back so strong in the Victorian age, and people really start to identify with it. And all the Arthurian tales are starting to be retold in various ways. And I think you can see a lot of that here too. Yeah, maybe it is the same kind of thing that would happen in a Gothic novel with a hero who wants to act honorably all the time, but just tempered with the little, what's that word, duty, which I think is, and it's what he's doing too, and the fact that he is going on with his work. That is his duty. You would think that his duty in the castle would have been to defeat Dracula. Like, that should be your duty, right? I mean, you've encountered this evil figure, and I think that's what goes on more in a traditional European Gothic novel from the late 18th or early 19th century, is that they would perhaps see that as their duty. But here, he recognizes that he has another role that he has to play, and it's important, and he goes through with it.
I don't think he would recognize that as his duty until it was too late. As far as trying to defeat Dracula in the castle, it was before. By the time he knew what was going on, he was too far gone, and Dracula was in complete control at that point.
Yeah, I guess he's not working then. There comes a point where he knows he's just being held prisoner.
Yeah.
And then he does think about destroying Dracula, and he tries and fails. And then he thinks about escape. And that's interesting too, because you think of all these, all these, especially in World War II, the POWs who would maybe this is just in the movies where they make it a point that like it's their duty to try to escape from the enemy. Yeah, that's the best answer I could come up with. That I think there's a Victorian shade on this, but it's not that far from a Gothic hero working to defeat evil, or at least the fact that they feel that they have this honorable thing that they have to go through. So, anyway. And somebody, I just happened to notice that somebody in the chat mentioned Gothic heroes are, often unreliable, or not unreliable, but Gothic heroes are often ineffective, and the Gothic heroines tend to be more effective, and that's actually true. I think that was from Carrie. So she reads it, and she reads this terrible record that upsets her, but she also is wondering, is it true? Right? Whether it be true or only imagination. I wonder if there's any truth in it. Did he get his brain fever and then write all those terrible things, or had he some cause for it? And then she thinks maybe I shall never know, because I can't talk to him about it. I'm not going to bring this subject up with him. And yet that man we saw yesterday, he seemed quite certain of him. I mean, Jonathan seemed quite certain that it was Dracula. And then I suppose it was the funeral that upset him and sent his mind back on some train of thought. I mean, she's really trying to work this out, and we get Stoker doing this, working out Mina's thought process, because she's just like the other characters, right? She is logical, analytical, like she's not going to immediately think that there's a supernatural explanation, because that's ridiculous.
Well, there's a line that was left out. It's in the typescript, where it implies that she believes that the man in the Munich dead house and Dracula are two separate people that Jonathan has conflated. And that the man that they saw was actually the man from the Munich dead house, and he just thinks that he fears him because he's put the two together. Yeah. And Stoker had to cut that out because he's dropped the Munich dead house from this book. So excellent. Yeah. And that also, is that what she says, that he's conflated the two? I didn't remember that. I forget exactly how it's worded, but it's something along those lines. But then she's, there seems to be through it all some thread of continuity, she writes. The fearful Count was coming to London. If it should be, and he came to London with his teeming millions, there may be a solemn duty, and if it come, a duty again, and if it come, we must not shrink from it. I shall be prepared. I shall get my typewriter this very hour and begin transcribing. Ever ready, but that's kind of her duty in a sense, that she has this job to do. She can do this and help with whatever, needs to be done. But we get, she talks about his duties, and then she writes here about his solemn duty. And twice she mentions his solemn duty in that passage. So this is something in Stoker's head, that he is thinking about the duty of his characters, of course, and the word keeps popping out as his character continues to write. Somebody asked a question about where do we find supplemental it's about Blood of Dracula. I'll talk about that later. So Mina right away, she starts prepping for she's prepping for the coming storm, right? I mean, she doesn't know it's going to be a storm but she thinks that something could happen and I should get ready. And I just love this. I mean, what a character she is. She's so not the
the shrinking violet. She is determined, she is smart, she is capable, she does what needs to be done, and thinks ahead. She plans ahead. She's a great character. I talked about how essential Jonathan will become to the group when they're hunting Dracula, but we all know that even with Van Helsing, we all know Mina is the most important person in this group. So nobody catches Dracula without Mina. I think it's difficult without some of them, and it's very difficult without Van Helsing. But once Van Helsing is at least giving them the information they need to know, they could do that. They could, and they don't even. Well, anyway, that's for later.
Well, a couple things there. I think that even though it's not explicit, she is kind of the catalyst for him to finally start sharing information, because he realizes how observant she is. She's going to figure it out on her own anyway.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit that in a minute. Yeah.
And also she, I believe, is the prototype for the final girl in all the slasher movies.
That's interesting. Yeah. And that works. And like almost, prototyping. She's still not going to be in the action. Like that's not going to happen yet in a novel written in 1897. But especially with Stoker writing it and all these strapping, young men out, who can do all the action. But Mina on the Gatling gun at the end would have been cool. So anyway, and then she gets a letter in confidence, which is interesting. Because it's letter Van Helsing to Mrs. Harker, 24 September, and then it says confidence in parentheses. And does that mean when it's delivered on the envelope, it says like only she's allowed to open it? Or I just don't understand how you can deliver a letter to her any more in confidence than any letter delivered to her during the house would be anyway.
It is a little weird.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure of that, and I wonder if that's a kind of, some kind of Victorianism or some kind of Victorian male thing that I don't understand. I looked off all notes. I checked online.
It's not annotated anywhere if it were that.
It's not, and I looked online and I see if I could figure out that phrase and what that might refer to with letters. But maybe it's a fact that maybe it's not delivered through the post. Maybe it's delivered right to her, like a private delivery right to Mina. But anyway, because Van Helsing needs to talk to her and only her, and it also alludes to the secrecy thing that goes on here. But he sends her a letter. I sent you the news about Lucy. And now I implore you, help me. It is for others' good that I ask to redress great wrong and to lift much and terrible troubles. We get a lot, and through this whole chapter, we'll get a lot of Van Helsing's, convoluted way of saying things. But I must keep it private for the present from all. So this is why it's in confidence, is that he's trying to keep this all a secret. But he needs some help. He's come across Mina's name in the letters, in the journal, in the diary that Lucy was keeping, and he needs to talk to her. But it's important. So she writes to him right away, telegram, come today by 10:15 train if you can catch it. Can see you anytime you call. Wilhelmina Harker. She uses her full name, because it's something that I think an original audience would catch, that we see Mina Harker's journal in the chapter heading or the section headings here for the thing, but she's not going to write Mina Harker to a man she has never met. I'm surprised, and maybe this is true too. Maybe I should read into this further. Maybe it's unusual that she writes Wilhelmina Harker and that she doesn't write Mrs. Jonathan Harker, which may have been more common for women to respond to a strange man, not even with their first name and her married name there, but the fact that she is. They would usually respond, I think, with their kind of marriage title, like Mrs. Wilhelmina, right?
That's probably true. I never thought of that, but yeah, that's
And that makes her more of an individual. That, you know, yes, I'm married, of course, and she's never not going to acknowledge that she's in a marriage and she loves her husband and she's okay with that. But the fact that she's willing to say, I'm Wilhelmina Harker, and maybe in a sense, I was like, not even Mrs. Harker. Does he calls her Madam when he starts the letter? Oh, and then he calls her Madam Mina during it. He says, "Oh, Madam Mina, by that love I implore you." Because I think that's the name he has picked up. I don't think he knows his. Oh, he wouldn't know her name's Wilhelmina. That would have to be a guess that Mina is short for Wilhelmina. He only knows her as Mina from Lucy's letters and diary accounts, and she has responded, "It's Wilhelmina Harker." So maybe she's even putting him in his place in a little bit. It's Wilhelmina. You don't call me Mina. Then later we'll go into names. I think they have a little name thing where they talk about. But then we're back to her journal that day. She's terribly excited about the visit of Dr. Van Helsing. And of course he's coming about Lucy and not about Jonathan. And, you know, and she's, you know, right away she links in her head that maybe he can help with Jonathan. And we all know that Jonathan and Lucy are linked by their, you know, by the perpetrator, by Dracula. Mina doesn't know that. Van Helsing doesn't know that. But characters seem to put these things together quicker than they realize things have a link. And I hope, too, that Dr. Van Helsing will not blame me. I have had so much trouble and anxiety of late that I feel I cannot bear more just at present. I suppose a cry does us all good at times, clears the air as other rain does. And so she has a moment where, you know, she has a good cry, and she's anxious, and she's admitting that this is her journal after all. She can say these things in her journal.
Well, I think it might be worth noting while we're talking about her not wanting to be blamed that in the notes at one point he had it where Mina was going to be the one to call Seward in while they were still in Whitby.
Yeah.
So she couldn't be blamed then.
Yeah, and he and that blame thing will happen again too. So I want to hit that blame thing well no, it's odd that is it a little bit later when she talks about blame again. I just think it's just a shame right off the bat. You know, I hope Dr. Van Helsing will not blame me as if maybe I had done something wrong or didn't reveal something about Lucy's illness that caused her to die. And that blame is it's just an all too real thing that, you know, women have always been forced to feel in the world that they're, and later, well, she'll make the, you know, the Adam and Eve joke later that shows that she's part of that, you know, patriarchal system where women are blamed for things. It's nice that Mina is so strong and keeps breaking out of the ordinary mold that women are too often forced into, and especially in a male, you know, especially in a novel written by a man. But that kind of thing is still there. Why would you think you're at all at fault for this, Mina?
I also think sometimes, I mean, I know that we're talking about this particular book, but when you're dealing with death, a lot of times, no matter of gender, people, if they feel it was preventable, feel blame, regardless if they're a man or a woman.
Yeah.
You know, what could I have done differently that could have prevented this?
That is true. It is, you know, that is a common reaction, especially for, you know, when someone you're close to dies, and you do think maybe there's something I could have done to prevent it. And it's complete mystery to Mina. She knows nothing about Lucy's death. She knows nothing about, you know, that she went downhill and the blood, her you know, that she kept showing up without. She knows nothing except she was sleepwalking a little bit before I left, and then she was dead. You know, it's just nothing. Mina has nothing to go on for why she's even died. Oh, and also one thing I want to mention too is like Van Helsing in this, he's not only priming her for the great endeavor that he needs everybody to get on, that, you know, that in his telegram to her that he needs to that it's to redress great wrong and to take care of these terrible troubles, but he's also the investigator. He's following up on clues. He has come across her name in letters and journal and the diary entries and thought, oh, that maybe she knows something that I can follow up on here. So he's absolutely pursuing this as a detective does in a novel or in real life, but in Stoker's case and in this world, like that Sherlock Holmes would do. Sherlock Holmes is going to look at the letters and say, she had an incident here where she was sleepwalking and had some kind of incident at the cliff, and this person was with her, and that's who I'm going to, interview first to find out more. So Van Helsing is beginning his investigation. He begins his investigation by looking at the documents, and now he's starting to interview not suspects, but people who might be able to give him more information. And so she then writes, then this 25th of September is later. He has come and gone, so we get a little bit before, and then she tells us about the meeting. And it's, oh, what a strange meeting, and how it all makes my head whirl round. I feel like one in a dream. Can it be all possible or even part of it? And that if I had read those lines to you, he has come and gone, oh, what a strange meeting, and how it makes it all my head whirl round. I feel like one in a dream. Can it all be possible or even a part of it? Who said that in the novel? That sounds like Jonathan at the beginning of the novel about Dracula is what it sounds like. And I think those parallels, happen unintentionally probably from Stoker. But again, it's another Dracula Van Helsing parallel here that Jonathan talks about things seem like they're in a dream, and goes through this, kind of situation after he encounters this foreign gentleman, and the same thing happens with Mina here with Van Helsing. And that she says, if I had not read Jonathan's journal first, I should never have accepted even a possibility. And right away, though, she says, I shall try to save him from it. Like Mina is going to save Jonathan. And she does. To know for and she finds to know for certain that his eyes and ears and brain, I love that, did not deceive him. It is all true. When the doubt is removed, no matter which, waking or dreaming, may prove the truth. When you stop doubting, you can figure, and it's also an echo of Sherlock in there too, that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth. That's a famous Sherlock Holmes line. And when doubt is removed, no matter which, waking or dreaming, may prove the truth. She's ready. She's ready to save Jonathan, save everyone, take down Dracula. And then she talks about Van Helsing. He must be a good man as well as a clever one if he is Arthur's friend and Dr. Seward's. Well, that's a little odd. I mean, I don't see why him knowing Arthur. I mean, it's the class thing. If Lord Godalming approves of him, then certainly. But she's met Arthur at least, or I don't know. Has she even met Arthur?
I don't think so.
I think she only hears about Arthur and Seward. I don't think she's met any of these people yet. But I don't think so. No, the whole time she's in Whitby, she doesn't meet anybody. So anyway, they're friends of Lucy's, and one of them was engaged to her, and it's like she's got his papers. She's got Van Helsing's bona fides. If these people approve of him, he's okay. And she's very strong in her acceptance of her approval of Van Helsing. But she does take the time to consider that, at least, is maybe what I'm getting at. She takes time to consider, like, well, I need to make sure he checks out okay. And then she goes into this whole, used to think I would like to practice interviewing. Again, this new woman coming up with ways that I can use skills that professionals use. And then the whole passage here of her meeting with, she's going to try to do it verbatim, like what he said. And she uncannily gets his broken English and seems to memorize all of it. I mean, it's not necessarily believable in a novel, but obviously Stoker's writing it. And then she writes the passage. And here is one of the great, what you can all use now as a great trivia question about Dracula, okay? What's the name of Mina and Jonathan's servant? And it's right there in the text. It was, in a few minutes, Mary opened the door and announced Dr. Van Helsing. So in the Les Klinger notes, he writes that it just might be people called their servants Mary and Martha.
Whether that was their name or not.
I'll call you Mary as she applies for the job. There's a famous book of that, too. I'm trying to think, isn't there? Or that somebody, when the servants come and say, like, this is your name. But anyway, she's somebody, Adam in the chat writes, not Karen? No. So, I really feel bad for that, don't you? Like, people named Karen, that's become like this weird thing. There was a New York Times article about how the name Karen is being used to describe like undesirable people, and that's I mean, like, man, if Edward became that, that would suck. So anyway.
My wife knows a woman named Karen who actually uses the term anyway.
In the book selling world, I used to work for somebody used to collect antiquarian used books, and he said that he and some people he knew referred to the guys who came out and trolled over the books, and they looked like they were kind of single, never really have a relationship, stuck in their house, just filled with books and papers that they would wind up buying from all these used sales and garage sales. They called them Eds. So, oh, look, there's an Ed. So, so maybe that is a more common term that I don't know. But anyway, I'm okay with it. I don't care. I collect a lot of junk too. So, but Mary opened the door, and she's got this complete physical description of Van Helsing. Read her Van Helsing description. And I'm actually going to ask you to read that especially because my cat is in the room with me and I think she's dying to get out here. Well, look, you can see her little head right down here. She's trying to get out the door. So why don't you read that while I let the cat out?
I rose and bowed, and he came towards me, a man of medium height, strongly built, with his shoulders set back over a broad, deep chest and a neck well balanced on the trunk as the head is on the neck. The poise of the head strikes one at once as indicative of thought and power. The head is noble, well-sized, broad, and large behind the ears. The face, clean-shaven, shows a hard, square chin, a large, resolute, mobile mouth, a good-sized nose, rather straight, but with quick, sensitive nostrils that seem to broaden as the big, bushy brows come down and the mouth tightens. The forehead is broad and fine, rising at first almost straight, and then sloping back above two bumps or ridges wide apart. Such a forehead that the reddish hair cannot possibly tumble over it, but falls naturally back into the sides. Big, dark blue eyes are set widely apart and are quick and tender or stern with the man's moods.
Wow. Like, could you imagine meeting someone for the first time and coming up with that description? Now, I don't know if Stoker means this to take into account that this character, Mina, is so absolutely observant and that she would notice all these details. But she does. She does have these, he maybe inadvertently gives her these great powers of observation. And it's also a very conventional way for people in books, especially in the 19th century, to be described using all these kind of, there's hints of phrenology in it you get with the shape of his head and his forehead, but it's more this, physiognomy, which you would read a person's character through their physical description. It's not just the reading their character through the bumps in their heads like phrenology. It's everything. It's the nose, or whether it's aquiline, and here it's certainly not aquiline.
Yeah.
It is
Specifically not.
yes, it's a good sized nose, rather straight. And then she says, but with quick, sensitive nostrils. What the hell is that? What possibly could lead you to describe someone's nostrils as quick, sensitive nostrils? I mean, that would be, if you ever describe someone like this, it would be hilariously funny.
But I also feel like Stoker, while not specifically describing himself, is describing a version of himself. There's elements of Stoker in that description.
Broad, deep chest. It's the medium weight is the only difference.
Yeah.
You know, Stoker was a big boy. But he gives him a broad, deep chest, a neck well balanced on the trunk as the head is on the neck. I mean, that's just funny. But a hard, square chin, resolute, mobile mouth. I could really see. And obviously, I mean, he's given him his name. I mean, he's, you know, Van Helsing's first name is Abraham. That is the Bram's full name is Abraham. So it is, when you're writing a book or a story or anything, and you give a character your name, I mean, that's a ding, ding, ding. There's no way that you're not doing something with that. When you give a character a name of someone who you were very close to, how does that not register with you? When Jane Austen in Pride and Prejudice gives the oldest sister, who is, beautiful and elegant, and her name is Jane. Like, how does she not? And it could also just be in a case like that, like it's a private joke with the family, that Jane has cast herself as this character, especially because her novels were very tied up with her family, and they were all the first readers, especially those early ones. But for, Bram Stoker, Abraham, if I write a novel and the hero vampire hunter is named Edward, well, you know why, and he has a long beard, and you know why, because I'm identifying with that character.
When I used to write, I used to name all the worst characters after my sister-in-law.
I assume she's not watching the show.
Oh, she might be. She knew I did it. She's fun.
Good. All righty. I've been killed in several novels. I have friends who write novels and comic books, and I have been murdered. I was murdered by the Wolfman in the novelization of the Wolfman. Jonathan Mayberry wrote the novelization for that, and he has two Bobbies in London when the Wolfman goes on his tear, and one of them is Pettit, and the Wolfman kills him. And I was also killed by the Punisher in a comic book. I was killed by a serial killer in Philadelphia, but I was Edith Pettit in that. I was an old hooker in Kensington who was murdered by a serial killer. So I've been in several, and I've almost always killed. So that is what my friends do. They kill me. So read into that, if you will. But anyway, he has quick, sensitive nostrils. Maybe Bram thought he had quick, sensitive nostrils, and big, dark blue eyes set widely apart, and are quick and tender or stern with the man's moods. So we get a complete description of Van Helsing, and it's only two characters in this book we get a complete description of, right? Van Helsing and Dracula. We know everything. We know what their forehead looks like, what their eyebrows are like, what kind of nostrils they have. I mean, we get complete descriptions of only those two characters. And thanks to Mina turning into this reporter all of a sudden. I'm just going to try this out. I'll try to be a reporter. And she's a perfect reporter. This is how great she is. One of the first things he says, or Mrs. Harker, is it not? And she says, that was Miss Mina Murray. Oh, no. Then he says, that was Miss Mina Murray. And then he says, Madam Mina, it is on account of the dead I come. So that's an ominous way to meet somebody. It is on account of the dead I come. I think you can only get away with that in the 19th century. And then he asks if she's, can help him about the time she was with Lucy. And she says, oh, sure, I can help you. Oh, you can remember? And she's like, oh, no, I've got it all written down. And then she plays this little trick on him, which I always find interesting. I could not resist the temptation of mystifying him a bit. I suppose it is some of the taste of the original apple that remains still in our mouths. So only a man writes that, a woman thinking that, okay? that she's going to identify with, Eve, tricking, Adam. So she says, so I handed him the shorthand diary, and then it's like, oh, I can't read this. It's in shorthand. Haha. But
it's the one skill that Van Helsing lacks, right?
yes, it's like this guy's got all these letters after his name, but he can't read shorthand. So finally we find something that Van Helsing doesn't have an advanced degree. Oh, I only have a BA, and I only have an associate's degree in shorthand. I can't read this. So, but she's also testing. I mean, I think, she's taking some control away from him in a sense, I think he's testing her in a sense. Like the way he says to her, then you have good memory for facts, for details. It is not always so with young ladies. Like he throws that down there like, oh, you can remember this, little girl? And she's right back with, oh yeah, here you go. And not only do I have the information, but you can't even read it. So it is a joke that is in response to, I think, his comments, but also she's taking a little bit of control away from him. And that's really nice to see, that she said, not only do I have skills that I can write in shorthand, but I'm going to take control away from you in this moment. You need me. But it's Bram Stoker writing it. So while she might be a new woman, she's still got to be non-threatening in a way. And I think that's where the joke about Eve comes in. I think, in Stoker's creative mind, when he has Mina come out with something that is going to demonstrate that she is in control and, and is a kind of new woman, then it has to be tempered in some way. And I think the tempering is that Eve joke that she makes. That she's non-threatening. Don't worry, I can have all these skills. I can take control of the situation, but I'm not threatening your position. And like she understands her position in the grand scheme. So, but as I've said before, I mean, Stoker's created such a great character in her. She's always like, the character itself is always like bursting out of the constraints he's trying to put her in. And I really like that. And also when she hands him the shorthand diary, and then she says, oh, I've typewritten it all out for you. Again, another like, point for me. I took the typewritten copy from my work basket and handed it to him. And I don't think I've ever seen work basket for a woman in the 19th century that did not refer to her sewing or knitting gear. Like that's what women keep in their work basket. Their work basket, it's the kind of work that you keep in a basket. It's the work that you do in between all the other chores or things that you have to do. And it's almost always, and I've never seen it not, to be sewing work. But for Mina, it's typewritten notes from the shorthand of a journal from her husband and herself. She is completely on top of everything that she needs to do before she even needs to do it. And that's the kind of thing. I mean, if a woman's work basket would normally contain sewing or knitting, for Mina, it's the type that counts of encounters with vampires. I mean, this isn't very much a sense that she's a new woman. That joke that she made earlier about being a new woman, that she really is, that she doesn't play by the rules that she is supposed to be. Now, there's a little more to that we'll come up to very soon. But first, she has to order lunch. We'll read it over whilst I order lunch. I love that. That's, they're still going to live their very Victorian lives. If you come to visit, and if you come at this time of the day, well, then we certainly have to have lunch. And I'm going to order lunch, and that's when we'll talk about things. So, do you have any more to add to that because I want to hit mid-break announcements? Go ahead.
It should be pointed out the pace that she must have been working at, because this is the 25th, and she started typing Jonathan's journal on the 24th, and that's not a short piece.
She is a quick writer, a quick typist, I must say. So, Yeah, I don't type that fast. So anyway, and I type, typing is really difficult for me. So
Transcribing.
I can never quite not look at the keys when I'm typing. So I never got good at that. So I mean, I think if I worked at it, I probably could. If I purposefully did not look at the keys, I could probably do a pretty good job because I've been typing for so long. I learned type. I'm of an age where I learned typing. I had a class in typing in high school, and all freshmen going into my high school had to learn typing, and that's what it was like a full year-long class. You just learned the keyboard typing, all these exercises. You did all of that for a whole year because it was very important. And then all our papers, everything we did for the rest of high school, we had to type up. I went to a college prep school. I went to LaSalle College High School in Philadelphia, just outside of Philadelphia. And so
we had that also, but we had typewriters and keyboards with removable keys. So we would spend the last half of the class rearranging all the keys for the next class.
That's great. Oh man, I would have loved that. But now you don't have to do it because kids are on keyboards all the time and nobody teaches that kind of proper way to do it. And I think it is an unnecessary. I mean, it's necessary if you want to be like a super fast and good typist, but it doesn't matter that much.
Most people are typing with their thumbs these days anyway.
Yeah, thumbs, just one finger. I mean, I know a lot of writers too who are always just two-finger typers anyway, that they just type on with two fingers anyway. But yeah, I typed as a kid though, which is weird. I got a typewriter because I wanted to be a writer, and I'm like, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I'm typing up stories, which I still have.
Ed,
typing up stories on a typewriter.
I'm pretty sure you and I are the same person, Ed.
Yes, you collect better than I do. So, all righty. Let's take our mid-break, and I'll tell you guys about some exciting things going on at the Rosenbach and associated especially with our Dracula show. I want to remind everybody, remember, you can join the Dracula Club for just $30. And this special goes on throughout the month of August. I think we're ending it on September 1st or something. Anyway, it's August. For just $30, you can receive the full benefits of Rosenbach membership for an entire year. You will get exclusive member access to new programs like Monday Drac Chat. You will get 50% off programs like Dracula on Film with David Scal, which happens later this month. Friday night, 6:30 p.m. EST, August 28th. And 50% off programs like that, or any program that the Rosenbach puts on and that we charge a fee for. And you get 10% off Rosenbach reading courses, including Read the Blood of Dracula. And you also get the undying satisfaction of helping support the home of Stoker's notes for Dracula. Tomorrow night, we will debut our new Monday Drac Chat show at 6:30 p.m. EST. I have to remember to always say the Eastern Standard Time because people are watching from all different states and countries. And someone did mention at one point that, like, oh, I forgot about the time difference and missed the show. So, but tomorrow night, we'll be on Monday Drac Chat, 6:30 p.m. EST. The show lasts for just 1 hour. And each week, somebody in our Dracufile audience will join me to talk about the fabulous ideas and topics that you guys are all raising in today's chat. And then we'll also get to know the Dracula obsessions of this Dracufile every week. A new one every week will come on. And tomorrow's Dracufile joining me will be Lee Price. And I'm pretty certain Lee's in the chat today. Lee, say hi to everybody in the chat. I've known Lee for several years, and through the Rosenbach, through things that he's done, and Lee's a great contributor to the chat and to Facebook as well. He's taking notes to talk about tomorrow night. I look forward to adding even more Dracula talk to my life with Lee. So thanks, Lee, for being on the first one. And then every week I'll reveal on Facebook and then on the show who the guest is going to be for that night. So for the Monday night show. We will also have a brand new song from Pleated Gazelle that Tucker has created to play over the opening and closing of the show. It's really cool. I'm really excited. And the name of it again is
Ritual in the Blood Room.
Ritual in the Blood Room. Yes, I love the Blood Room. Oh man, I wish the Blood Room was in here. So that's the Dracula novel I'm gonna write, like that includes the Blood Room. So we will have that. It's really cool. I can't wait to play it for you guys. So tune in early. Tune in a little over 3 minutes early, so you can definitely hear the whole cut of the song, and that'll be really exciting. Remember to watch Monday Drac Chat. You need to register for it to get the Zoom link. It's not the same link you're using for Sundays with Dracula. You go to our website, go to the Dracula Club link, and then you will see. Matter of fact, I'll just share that with you right now. Here it is, Dracula Club. Go to rosenbach.org/the Dracula Club with a couple hyphens in there. Here's the Dracula Club. You'll see join the members only Drac Chat, and you click on that. And then you can register for Drac Chat. Also on here are the links for the Dracula on Film with David Skal, which is August 28th. I was right, it's 6:30. You can get 50% off of that if you're in the Dracula Club, and the Read the Blood of Dracula course right here. Now, somebody asked me a question in the Q&A. Annie and I were wondering, where do we find the supplemental materials for the Blood of Dracula sessions? It seems for the first, there might not be any materials besides Stoker's Dracula. That's true. The first session on August 18th is just Dracula. For the future ones, I'm putting PDFs together, and I will send them. I will send a link to everybody for those PDFs for the future classes. So the Vampire Folklore will be the first one in August, or in September, and I will send out the links for that then. I'm sorry. Remember, you can only watch it if you register. So that's what I was doing that for. Register for Monday Drac Chat. And remember, it's also for Rosenbach and Dracula Club members only. There will be no Facebook live stream, nor will we post this show online afterwards. The only way you can access it is to be a Rosenbach member, a Dracula Club member, and you need to register for it. You can only watch it live on Zoom. So, and I want to send out a big thank you. We just unveiled this Dracula Club last week, and we had a big response, which is really nice. I am just so grateful that we get the kind of audience we get for this show that I put together during the shutdown in my study, and it's really worked. And I want to run through a bunch of quick thank yous, and then we'll get back to the chapter. From Philadelphia, PA, of course, because we're here and we have a lot of audience here, I want to thank for joining Dracula Club. I want to thank Gretchen, Margaret, Christine, Allie, Timothy, Jeffrey, Melissa, Danielle, and Claire. From nearby Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, thanks for joining Dracula Club to Janet, Rachel, Tammy, and Tucker. Tucker's not only a co-host, music director of Sundays with Dracula, and he's a member of the Dracula Club. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be too. I want to thank Britta from Hamburg, Germany, Niels and Lisa Lotta from Denmark, Demita and Anna from Illinois, Thomas from New Jersey, Vanessa from Wisconsin, Lockie and Bruce from New York, Holly from Missouri, Frederick from Washington, Barbara and Roberta from Massachusetts, Mary from Virginia, and Jennifer from Maryland. Thank you all for joining Dracula Club. If you joined and I didn't say your name, it's just because I haven't gotten it up in time. So like this was as of Friday that I got all of these names. So thank you all for joining the Dracula Club, and I hope spread the word. Tell more people that you know about Dracula Club, about this program, about Monday Drac Chat, about Dracula on Film with David Skal, about Read the Blood of Dracula course. Tell people about this and get them to sign up and do these things, because then I get to do more stuff like this. So thank you all. Back to the chapter. Van Helsman is very excited, and then he swears fidelity to Mina when he, after he reads over all of this stuff. Oh, Madam Mina, How can I say what I owe to you? This paper is as sunshine. It opens the gate to me. I am dazed. I am dazzled with so much light, and yet clouds roll in behind the light every time. He said this very solemnly, because obviously he's dealing with a very, dark subject here. But then he swears to her, I will serve you as a friend. And then he says, there are darknesses in life and there are lights. You are one of the lights. It's a great line to give to someone. But as usual with Van Helsing, it's so strong. You meet Van Helsing and he is the best friend you've ever had in your entire life forever right away. That he is so effusive for people, with people who can help him. And of course it's a difficult thing. It is they're fighting the darkness, as he says. And Mina is one of the lights, and that's the dazzle, which I came out with the name for my drink. He'll even say it again in a little bit. So cheers to Van Helsing, and cheers to Mina for being the light that causes the dazzle, right? I gotta make a new one soon, so I'm gonna have to ask you to read soon, then I'll make a new drink. But also what's interesting in this too is, like, who's the light in this novel up to now?
Up till now, it would have been Lucy.
Who was the light in this novel?
The light was Lucy.
Light was Lucy. Even said her name. Lucy is light, It's bright light. That's what Lucy means. Lucy Westenra, she's like the light of the West. I mean, the Mina is now the light in the novel. These men need a woman around them who provides them with this kind of radiance in order to inspire them. This is a very Victorian. This is a very Victorian. This is that kind of the Arthurian chivalric thing showing up in the Victorian age too, where they, where you need this kind of, in this case, it's not an unattainable woman, but it is still this woman who represents light and on a pedestal, who you can all admire and love and devote yourself to. And that was Lucy, and now it's Mina. So Mina gets to be that person for everyone. And there are, he also, though, in this calls her, where does he call her the angel? I think that's a little later, right? Where he starts in with, you're an angel. It's just in the next paragraph. Oh, Madam Mina, good woman, good women tell all their lives, and by day and by hour and by minute, such thing that angels can read, and we men who wish to know have in us something of angels' eyes. Is that the only time he's talking about angels? I thought he was. That is. But the associating women with angels is always kind of a little tough it's tough to stomach in Victorian novels. I mean, Mina's validated here that she is extraordinarily important and knows a lot of stuff and has all kinds of skills, but she's also categorized as a kind of angel, and this will happen more than once here. And there is a Victorian convention, and we get the line from Angel in the House. We get that from Coventry Patmore. He's got a poem that talks about the woman, this beautiful domestic woman who takes care of the house and does all the things, and she's so nice and perfect. And the angel in the house trope was a big thing that Victorians loved to think about their women. And there's this whole kind of cult of true womanhood that happens in the 19th century. And there's a great essay about this by Barbara Welter, Welter, that she wrote in 1966. And this often turns up in, in literary courses about, or historical courses studying the Victorian age. But this Barbara Welter essay from 1966, about the cult of true womanhood. What she does is she takes women's magazines, gift books, religious tracts, cookbooks, and then also some personal diaries throughout the from 1820 to 1860. And by examining all these, she came up with 4 values that were supposed to be the supreme values for women. But when I say this, it's kind of like, I think it winds up at the end of the day being the 4 values men wanted women to have. And it is piety, purity, submissiveness, and domesticity. So supposed to be pious, devoted to your religion and practicing those religious beliefs. Pure, that, definitely pure, not sinning, not, breaking rules. Submissive, that you always do what, the authorities in your life tell you to do. And domesticity, that you take care of the house. You're taking care of the home front. While, even if it's through servants, you're still in charge, taking care of the home front, while the man takes care of the other things. And I think for all of Mina's abilities, intelligence, for all her resembling the new women, a new woman, that new woman that happens in the late 19th. And remember, the new woman in the late Victorian age is a pejorative at first. People were calling them, oh, she's a new woman, meaning that she can, that she rides a bicycle and, works as a typist, and maybe she even wears pants sometimes. That new woman thing is not meant as a compliment, but some people turn it over. And it is kind of jokingly used by Mina and Lucy early in this novel, or by Mina early in this novel. But it's also a way of asserting yourself and saying that, no, I am capable of doing things. I don't have to be just like everyone else. But Mina, for all her resembling a new woman in this, I think as long as she doesn't break that code, that the true womanhood, piety, purity, submissiveness, and domesticity, as long as she doesn't break that code, she's not a threat to the men. And she does not break those things. She does encompass piety, purity, submissiveness, and domesticity, even though she knows shorthand and she practices the skills of an interviewer here, and her work basket is filled with typed work, that she is capable and admirable, but Stoker never has her break those things, and that's why she's not threatening to the male characters in this, is that because there are times when they are kind of threatened by her and they will shut her out, and then it always hurts them in the end. So whether or not Stoker's aware of all this as he's writing, whether he's consciously portraying her this way and then later consciously showing that the men suffer when they shut her out, we don't know. But it's in the text, and that's the way it pans out. So Mina. So that's a little bit of a rant, sorry, but that is, but it's just like, yeah, there's these themes that are going on here, and I think it's important to understand, or the context. It's important to understand, what a good bit of the readership, the everyday reader, expected from characters. These are the kind of characters they saw, and for all the praise that I give Mina and for Stoker creating this great character, I think he reins her in, and I think he makes sure she still follows the rules. As a creator, that's what he's doing. So, and then this is a perfect example here too, because after all this stuff that Van Helsing is describing, and all this is so great, she gets hysterical. I suppose I was hysterical, for I threw myself on my knees and held my hands up to him, to Van Helsing. This is her pleading for him to help Jonathan, that she still has to behave for Stoker. He still has to have this character behave in a very stereotypical way for the very stereotypical way that people will expect women to behave.
So I forget which one it is, but one of my annotated editions makes the argument that this is actually a manipulation on her part of Van Helsing, that it's what he expects of her, so she does it.
I'll ask Mary and Lauren about this too, because that's a great point, because Mary and Lauren had this great point about Gothic novels and women fainting, whereas when I read it, I had always just assumed that this is an author, even male or female, showing how the female character is weak, that awful things happen and they faint. They point out to me that, like, Well, actually, that's their way of asserting a kind of power over the situation. Because, well, not a power, but that's their way of escaping a situation, that they get out of this awful thing by fainting. And it's a very interesting way to look at it. This whole scene itself is so. This is right off the stage, isn't it? This is this whole melodramatic, scene here. A shock, and after brain fever so soon, that was not good. What kind of shock was it? He thought he saw someone who recalled something terrible, something which led to his brain fever. And then she's like she's on her knees, she's throwing her hands in the air. I mean, I could absolutely see this is a stage setting for his characters, the dialogue between the two. They're also revealing, there's this kind of revealing declarations about themselves, emotional pleas. And then Van Helsing goes into one of his little mini lectures that he likes to do. This has already happened. He does it with Seward constantly because he's the teacher. My life is a barren and lonely one, and so full of work and the loneliness of my life, and and he goes through this whole paragraph. People don't speak of paragraphs. Well, maybe I do because I talk a lot, but it's a very disjointed paragraph. There'll be a lot of ellipses in it and dashes. But Van Helsing has this long paragraph here because he's the teacher, and he's becoming her teacher, I think, in this novel. He's already Seward's teacher, and now he'll become Mina's, and then soon Jonathan's, and then soon the whole group as he needs to teach them. Mina is afraid that he would think me a weak fool and Jonathan a madman if I tell him the story about this. And she says, Dr. Van Helsing, what I have to tell you is so queer that you must not laugh at me or at my husband. I have been since yesterday in a sort of fever of doubt. You must be kind to me and not think me foolish that I have even half believed some very strange things. So I like the language he's using here: queer, fever of doubt, half believed, strange. Strange is a big word that Dracula himself liked to use. That this is a bizarre situation that she's got to explain to a man who, for all intents and purposes, to her, is a scientist. And why on earth would Van Helsing believe any of this crazy stuff? Well, Mina, you're talking to the right scientist, because he believes everything, as we'll find out at the end of this chapter. And I love his response here, and how because he'll go into more of this later with Seward. But first with Mina, he says, I have learned not to think. You want to read that one there? Oh, my dear.
Yeah, the whole paragraph?
Yeah, just read that. Oh, my dear.
Oh, my dear, if you only knew how strange is the matter regarding which I am here, it is you who would laugh. I have learned not to think little of anyone's belief, no matter how strange it be. I have tried to keep an open mind, and it is not the ordinary things of life that could close it, but the strange things, the extraordinary things, the things that make one doubt if they be mad or sane.
That the strange things, the open mind, the things that make one doubt if they be mad or sane. That first of all, you don't ever hear a scientist talking like that, but he's sounding like the occult detective here. Do you do any reading of occult detective stories?
Not really. I used to watch Kolchak.
Kolchak, the greatest. Well, he's a reporter, but he's investigating.
Yeah.
So he is. And I was just talking to someone recently, Mark DeWidziak, who has written some Kolchak books after that, and he might be on a show in the future. So, but anyway, Van Helsing is a kind of important contribution to the occult detective kind of subgenre, and it's a genre that's a kind of a takeoff of the mystery detective genre, of which Sherlock Holmes is so important. And it's the occult detective is basically a Sherlock Holmes detective, but for the supernatural. And before Stoker, you even get this in Sheridan Le Fanu's Dr. Martin Hesselius in the Green Tea Story. and who is someone that investigates paranormal, supernatural occurrences. And Lifanu liked it so much that when he puts 4 stories together in a collection called Through a Glass Darkly, he adds Dr. Martin Hesselius in the beginning of each one. He writes these stories as if these are tales told by this Dr. Martin Hesselius. And Carmilla, the famous vampire story, is one of those stories that you can read Carmilla without that opening, section from Dr. Martin in it, because it's just added on in the published collection. It's originally published without that. And after Stoker, you get well, actually the first is Almir Vance, is a ghost detective. Hesketh Person, I think, is the author. And then after and that's just after Sherlock Holmes. And maybe right around like 1898, I think the first Aylmer Vance stories are published. And actually the real authors are Alice and Claude Askew. I just remembered I had a copy near me because I was reading it recently. And but they published under the name, I think it was Hesketh Person. And that's, I'm pretty sure, 1898. And it's this guy who investigates paranormal activity in a sense. And then after Stoker, you get Algernon Blackwood writing the Dr. John Silence stories. You get William Hope Hodgson writing the Carnacki stories. Carnackis are my favorite. Carnacki he's a ghost investigator. You have a haunted house, he's like the Ghostbuster, and you call him, and he's got this, and he has stories where it turns out it was nothing, that it wasn't a supernatural occurrence, but then he has stories where it is, and he's got these little tools, he's got this little, pentangle that he does, and he does these magical rituals to fight, the evil spirits. And Van Helsing, in a sense, he falls right into this. He is an occult detective. He is fighting the forces, the forces of supernatural evil. And we'll get into this a little bit at the end of this chapter too, but right here he's hinting at that. It's not the ordinary things of life that could close it, but the strange things, talking about having an open mind, the extraordinary things, the things that make one doubt if they be mad or sane. It's a very heavy thing that he's saying. And that is the kind of scientist that he is. So, but more later. I just wanted to set that up now. My setups are long, aren't they? So, all right, we're making a new drink here now. I've added the Aperol and gin, and a little Prosecco. And then you want to top that off with a little port. To taste. I did it earlier and it wasn't enough. So it's a sweet drink too. Aperol's kind of sweet. Aperol, if you ever have Campari, Aperol is like a sweeter Campari. So. Oh, that works. Yeah, it's a summer drink. I could drink that all day and get drunk, obviously, because it's all alcohol. Every ingredient in it is alcohol. So
same here.
All righty. So Mina says then when you can leave, she said, come back, talk to Jonathan. You can catch the quick 3:34 train, which will leave you at Paddington before 8. He was surprised at my knowledge of the trains offhand, but he does not know that I have made up all the trains to and from Exeter so that I may help Jonathan in case he is in a hurry. And that, again, it's this double-sided thing. It's on the one hand, I am brilliant. I know all the train schedules between these two places. But I'm doing it to help. Because I'm the good helpmeet in my family. So I'm an extraordinary person. I'm not going to break, conventions here. So, but she is extraordinary. So let's just leave it at that. Van Helsing sends a letter by hand. Doesn't say in confidence. I guess this means it's personally delivered, not like through the post office, because it's got to get to her right away. Because Van Helsing leaves, and he reads Jonathan's diary, and he's like, oh, holy shit. This is exactly what I was looking for. Van Helsing's like, I have to find a way that I have to figure out how a vampire attacked Lucy. And then he goes and meets Mina, and he reads her husband's account, and it's like, this vampire Dracula was coming to England. And boom, it all falls into Van Helsing's lap. One person he interviews, and it all falls into his lap. That's a great detective, because if you think like that's coincidence, nah, that's what Sherlock Holmes would have done. Sherlock Holmes would have looked at all the documents and figured out like, okay, I'm just going to go talk to this person. And then everything would have fallen into place, because it's a brilliant mind that can put it all together. And he tells her, you may sleep without doubt, strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it. It may be worse for others, but for him and you, there is no dread. His brain and his heart are all right. I am dazzle more than ever, but I must think. So another sip of my dazzle here. What do you think of that, Van Helsing, coming up with all this so quickly?
It's very coincidental, like you said, but it's also, I really like the way it flows in the story. I mean, it keeps you moving.
Yeah.
We're lucky he didn't go see anybody else. You know what I mean?
It's true, but it's true. I think you have to keep in mind too that Stoker has set him up as he is the brilliant guy. That it is more coincidental that Dracula goes to Whitby and the person he preys upon is best friends with Jonathan. Like, that's the coincidental part. I think that Van Helsing can quickly find them is not because the connection's already there, but also because he is brilliant. He's reading this and he knows this is the key here, and I need to go find out more about this from Mina. But also the way this novel is put together, I also think there's no coincidence. This is all, everything's connected for like, just as Dracula is supernatural and can maybe kind of control things from a distance, I think that is why things are connected here. Like, they are the things, that is the reason why things coincide, is because of the supernatural design that is going on from Dracula. So, I mean, Stoker never says that, right?
No,
but,
he leaves a lot to you.
But when you take the novel as a whole, that's like the easiest explanation for everything to occur this way. And I think it's designed too, in a sense. It's the same thing with reading Charles Dickens novels, and then suddenly towards the end you find out, oh, you're the son of whoever, and that nobody ever knew of, and you're actually related to this person, and it all kind of comes together, and everybody seems to kind of come in contact with everybody through the course of the novel. But that's Dickens's worldview. That's the way he views London. He thinks we are all connected in some way. And so he's writing a story that demonstrates how you might think in the teeming millions out there, we're all strangers, but we're not. We have connections with each other. So I think it's a design thing from the artist in that way. And I think with this novel, though, it becomes, maybe it's unintentional, but it's still a design feature of this novel, in that how they that Dracula, it's Dracula that makes everybody connected. It's his plan to come here, and he finds the right person who is sleepwalking, and it was also and it's maybe the Mina connection. Movies always have to explain this, right? Like, Jonathan shows him the picture of Mina, and then he's like, aha, and then that becomes the link, right?
Well, in fairness, though, I think the book shows that they don't have to show it. They just choose to, you know?
Yeah.
We when we read it, we can accept it. Why can't we accept it when we watch it? I don't see a reason.
Movies always have to explain Renfield too, and the perfect way to explain Renfield is he was before Jonathan, right? Like, he went there before Jonathan did, or they conflate him, and Renfield is Jonathan. The Renfield character is the one who goes and meets Dracula and comes back anyway. So,
it's funny because I don't mind that change as much as I mind the lost love change.
I don't mind the lost love change because it's so established. It is, and it goes back to The Mummy. It's The Mummy, movie that sets up that convention that reincarnated lost love is from the Mummy, Universal Mummy film. It's a story I love. So if you want a backstory, let's just say that's the easy one to use. So it's not necessarily original anymore. So Mina writes back to him right away, writes back to Van Helsing right away. What terrible, if it be true, what terrible things there are in the world, and what an awful thing if that man, that monster, be really in London. And then she's giving all this train information for many sentences. But I like that. Stoker's ratcheting up the threat. Dracula's here. He's been here, people. This is a threat to everybody in London, that Dracula is here. And we've seen him looking at a girl on the street. Jonathan and Mina did. So he's out there practicing right now. Jonathan Harker returns to writing a journal, September 26th. I thought never to write in this diary again, but the time has come. So Jonathan is returning to journal writing. He feels better. Mina showed me Van Helsing's letter, that everything I wrote down was true. I guess it all kind of comes back to him then. And it seems to have made a new man out of me. I felt impotent and in the dark and distrustful, but now that I know, I am not afraid even of the Count. And then he has got younger, and Hal Van Helsing is the man to unmask him and hunt him out. Jonathan is ready to do the role that he needs to do, right?
Yep.
He meets Van Helsing, you couldn't, little physiognomy jokes, with eyebrows like yours, and then he talks about Mina. Here she is, like she is one of God's women, fashioned by his own hand to show us men and other women that there is a heaven and where we can enter, and that its light can be here on earth. Shut the, up. That is so patronizing, so true, so sweet, so noble, so little an egoist. Certainly unlike you. And that, let me tell you, is much in this age so skeptical and selfish. But it is on the one hand acknowledging her and abilities, on the other hand, patronizing her and making her this, angel in the house. So, but Van Helsing meets Mina, friends forever, meets Jonathan, let us be friends for all our lives. He is your best friend as soon as you meet him. And then he leaves and he gets on the train, and just as he's at the train station, he sees the Westminster Gazette, which we know from the last chapter has the account of the Bloofer lady, and that's what he's reacting to. He grew quite white. Mein Gott, so soon, so soon. Love to Madam Mina, I shall write so soon as ever I can. He hops on the train. He realizes, oh no, there's already vampire attacks, and we'll find out at the end of this chapter, the big reveal, what's going on. But I think readers at the time know what's going on right away. I don't think this is a hidden kind of thing. I think you've really gotta try not to know what's going on for not to realize what this threat is, who the Bloofer lady is. So
we've also got Jonathan giving Van Helsing papers that we'll never see. They pertain to it in some way, shape, or form, but we'll never see it. It's all the papers from before he left on his trip.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see them in Dracula the Evidence from Josh O'Neill.
He said he wasn't writing anything new, so
yeah. So
that project sounds so awesome. Every time he talks about it, it gets better and better. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. So we're going to get to Seward's diary for the end of this chapter, but first, this is where I want to show a couple manuscript pages, and I'm going to start with this one here, which is an early chapter, an outline for this chapter, like this chapter and the next chapter. Here it is. This is book 2, chapter 7. And it just says, Dr. Seward's diary. I think I was going to show this last week and I ran out of time and I just showed something else. Or maybe I showed this last week and people start chatting now. They're like, you showed us this already. But anyway, I have different things to say about it if I did. But it's Dr. Seward's diary. And it is also crossed out here is one of the things I want to talk about today, because this is something that didn't make it into the novel. This is where it could have been. It could have been in the next chapter. At some point around now, he's trying to put this thing in here. And it is a dinner of revenge. And then the vow. And he's crossed these out. And even the vow will take place later. That's like a few chapters later that the vow takes place. But in this one, we also have strange rumors. That's what it says right here, strange rumors. You can see my little arrow there, right? Does that come up?
Yep.
Good. So it's strange rumors. And whatever that is, the most likely explanation is, I think, in Miller and 18 Bissang's notes here, is they think that could be about the Bloofer lady. That there's some rumors that something is going on, some vampire thing is going on. Do you have any other ideas of what strange rumors could refer to?
I'm skewed by the Miller book, so that's what I've always thought it was.
And also it just must be there's something weird going on somewhere. Strange. We know the way Stoker uses strange, and it's something probably supernatural going on. There's rumors of it, and here it's not even rumors. And what he winds up writing in text, it's not rumors. It's a newspaper account of what is going on. And then the professor's, and he crosses out opinion and writes advice, which I think is interesting. It's not his opinion, it's the professor's advice. The professor winds up being the Van Helsing character. Remember, he's got a few different people. When he's writing these initial notes down, this initial outline, he's still thinking he's got a professor of history, he's got a philosopher, he's got a detective. So he's kind of combined those now, and he's got the professor's advice, and he's got opening the vault. Now, this won't happen until next chapter. And horror, the professor's opinion, the vow, he's got all that. Like, maybe it's he's differentiating here. It's the professor's advice and then the professor's opinion. So he's giving people advice about how they're going to deal with these strange rumors that are happening. It winds up, they're going to open the vault. Horror. I love that he just writes horror. That's his note for himself. Horror. That's what I'm going to do. And that'll be what happens when they open the vault. Then he gives his opinion, and then the vow. And the vow will be to defeat the vampires, defeat this vampire, all vampires, whatever that's going to be. But I want to jump back to this here that he crosses out, and he'll wind up saying that this will happen again 4 times in the notes. He writes about a dinner that he wants to have. And here it's a dinner of revenge. That's the way he's described it right here. And I'm going to share another page, the one of the very early notes. And this is the first mention of the dinner that he has planned. And here it is. And this is the vampire. He's got this vampire, and see page 4. Well, are you seeing this? Did I share this?
It's not up yet, no.
Not up yet, sorry. I'm sharing it now. Boom, there it is. See that?
There you go.
Good. He's got vampire memorandum, and then the third memorandum. I guess he's got 2 others on the other page, but it's 4 here. And he's got 4 little notes that are all these vampire characteristics. And here's what was going to be the 4th one. But it winds up being instead are different plot ideas that he winds up not using. And the first one is at the top here, and it is the dinner party at the Mad Doctor's. 13, meaning there's 13 guests at this dinner party. Each has a number. Each asked to tell something strange. And then the order of numbers makes the story complete. At the end, the count comes in. So he's trying to create this weird story situation where all the 13 people sit down at the dinner table and they all tell a story, and they go in the order of the numbers, maybe that they randomly draw. And that's the order of the story. And you have to tell something strange. And at the end of it, the Count walks in. So I imagine he's expecting, like, the end of the story, the last person talking says something like, that would be, that would connect with the Count or the vampire, and and death rears its ugly head, and then the Count walks in. It would be something like that. But this dinner party idea, he really wants to have it, because it turns up in like 2 other outlines of chapters: the dinner party, the dinner party, the dinner, and he wants the dinner to happen, and he never does it. And I think one of the reasons he doesn't do it is because he never has Dracula encounter the characters on a social level, which is what is his original conception, that Dracula was going to come in and know the characters. And it's interesting that a couple movies do this, right? Aren't there? How many movies do this, where Dracula comes in? Well, it's the 68, right?
Yep, the 68 does it. 31 does it. They're social in 31.
They are. And it's actually winds up being a lot of the movie. The 79 Frank Langella, he comes in for the dinner at Seward's asylum in the beginning. So there's other details that Stoker has imagined that will happen, and how they start to get to know the Count, including at the end of this one, where he has the another situation here, like this. He's got it connected right to the dinner party, so maybe it's connected with it, but it is the divisional surgeon being sick. The doctor is asked to see a man in a coffin and then restores him to life, meaning, the Count. So the Count is connected here, and it says, so maybe during this dinner party, the Count comes in, they have dinner, and then the divisional surgeon is sick, and someone comes in and says, oh, someone has died and we need you to go and examine the body, and the Count goes with him and restores him to life. So that would be really a crazy scene. Like, there's so much work you have to do to tie that into what's going on in your novel, but it's this really interesting idea that Stoker has. And if that's tied to this dinner party scene, then it's really almost like this kind of weird Christ inversion thing going on, where this is Last Supper and there's somebody being resurrected, and Stoker likes to play with that. Stoker likes to play with that a lot with Dracula, this kind of, inversion, this subversion of a Christ figure is who Dracula. I mean, he's the Antichrist in a sense, is what you would be. So
how you always say that the story you want is the Blood Room story.
I want the Blood Room.
The dinner party story is the one that I've always wanted. I want that story so bad.
And Sortes Virgiliani is the other thing that pops up in the notes. So, and if you missed an earlier episode, there's a moment in the notes where it's still Lucy engaged to Seward, and she visits the asylum, and she wonders about what's that building next door, which is Carfax Abbey, where Dracula is. And then Seward gets permission for them to go and look in the Abbey, and they discover this room, and it's the Blood Room. And then 3 or 4 other times in the notes, Stoker writes about it again in a note saying, room colored like blood, the Blood Room. So at first you think, like, well, maybe he's referring to something in the asylum. Maybe it's like a transfusion kind of room. It's like, it's describing what happens in there. No, he means a room colored red like blood, which is probably actual blood that's been used as paint. That's what I want. I want that in a book. So I'm sure it's been in a couple books that I haven't read yet. So anyway, that'll be in the Dracula novel I write. And the Sortes Virgiliani thing is a thing he refers to a few times in the notes. And I think he's probably going to have Jonathan do this at the castle, in which you kind of cast your fortune by taking a copy of Virgil's works. And you just kind of turn the pages and put your finger in it, and whatever that couplet is a fortune for your life. And he was going to have Jonathan do this. I think it was just Jonathan, but it turns up in the notes in a few different places. So ideas that he dropped. So anyway, Seward, back to a journal. He said he was done with it. Jonathan was done with his journal. Well, because, there was no way around that, but Seward said he was done with the journal, and he writes here, truly there is no such thing as finality. Yes, that is true. And it will turn out to be true with Lucy. There's no such thing as finality. He thinks that she's dead and gone, and we will learn that she's not. So that's the setup here. Only a tiny bit of Renfield. I always want more Renfield, but it's just Renfield had become, to all intents, as sane as he ever was. And sane for Renfield means he was already well ahead with his fly business, and he had just started in the spider line also. So he had not been of any trouble to me. So Seward likes this. If Renfield's just going to be doing his flies and spiders, then he's not going to be escaping. He's not going to be cutting him and licking his blood off the floor. He is contained. He is content with his flies and spiders.
Do you think that's because Dracula is done with Lucy for the time being, and he's no longer jealous?
Well, early in the novel, Renfield's behavior was always tied into what Dracula was doing. And when last we saw Renfield, they were taking boxes from Carfax to another place, and Renfield saw that as a threat, because now Dracula will be somewhere else. He won't be right next door to me. And so he reacted to that. So if Dracula is there at Carfax, I think that is when he's violent, isn't it? And earlier on, I think every time Dracula is in Carfax, Renfield is violent and breaks out. And when he's not, he's okay. So I think this must mean that Dracula is not at Carfax, that he's actually in his coffins somewhere else, and Renfield doesn't react. I really have to go in and examine that carefully, but that was because there was two patterns. Number one, when he's there, Renfield has to break out and see him. And number two was was it the sunset and sunrise when Renfield reacts, gets violent, and then he settles down? Or was it just sunset?
I forget.
So there was a time of day when he does, but it's also when he's there, or when he feels threatened in some way. And he obviously felt threatened because they were taken, or maybe that was a sign that Dracula was in one of those crates that they were taking, which is actually the most likely explanation according to the text. But it also just seems, why would Dracula be in one of these? Like, he can just go out in the daytime. He's not like other vampires in the future where you can't go into the sunlight. So, but maybe he's just fed on that young woman in town that he was watching and needed to rest. I don't know. So, but Renfield's quiet right now, which means Dracula's not at Carfax at this moment, and is not doing anything that will threaten Renfield's position in the Dracula, corporation. Seward says everything is, however, now reopened. About he's talking about his feeling for Lucy. I thought that I'd be okay now, and now I'm not. And Van Helsing thinks he knows. I have an idea that Van Helsing thinks he knows too, but he will only let out enough at a time to whet curiosity, to let him know what happened to Lucy, what's going on, like how she died. And he looks and then he's looking over the paper about the kid. Then Van Helsing arrives, right? Yeah. And he shows him the paper, the Westminster Gazette, about the Bloofer lady. And I looked at it, the passage where it describes small puncture wounds on their throats. An idea struck me, and I looked up. Well, he said, it is like poor Lucy's. And what do you make of it? And then Seward's response is that simply that there is some cause in common. Whatever it was that injured her has injured them. And Van Helsing says that is true indirectly, but not directly. And especially if you have figured it out, this is a little maddening that Van Helsing is real, but it is his method, right? He is trying to let you figure it out. He doesn't want to just tell you. Doesn't ever happen. He winds up telling him. But in doing that, he goes on this rant here in a couple different places, including this one right here, this "You are a clever man, friend John" paragraph, that really kind of turn the occult detective. It would turn Van Helsing completely into the cult detective. First, he says, "You are too prejudiced. You do not let your eyes see, nor your ears hear, and that which is outside your daily life is not of account to you. Do you not think?" Which is all true. Which is all way of saying, when you examine something, you really need to come outside the box to figure out ways that why this is happening. And Seward's not quite doing that. But then when he goes on and he says, "Do you not think that there are things which you cannot understand, and yet which are? That some people see things that others cannot. But there are things old and new which must not be contemplated by men's eyes, because they know or think they know some things which other men have told them. Ah, it is the fault of our science that it wants to explain all. And if it explain not, then it says there is nothing to explain. But yet, we see us every day, the growth of new beliefs, which think themselves new and which are not yet, but the old, which pretend to be young, like the fine ladies at the opera." And he has his fine ladies at the opera joke because they're old, but they're trying to look young. "I suppose now you do not believe in corporeal transference, no, nor in materialization, no, nor in astral bodies, no, nor in the reading of thought, no, nor in hypnotism." Van Helsing believes in everything, doesn't he? And it's this crazy argument that just because we don't know exactly what it is, then I'm going to come up with all these things that it could be, but have no connection to what's actually going on. And it is the misuse of having an open mind. Having an open mind doesn't mean it could be aliens coming down, and there's no connection there. But Van Helsing goes down that road. And then the last thing he mentions is actually true. You can't hypnotize people. But it's only true. We only know it's true. You can believe in it because, well, there's evidence of it, for God's sake. So, like, I can learn how to hypnotize somebody and do it. And people can be hypnotized. But corporeal transference, no, that's what you do in Star Trek. That is, like, we don't have the technology for that yet. Materialization, astral bodies. I know people have said that they've been on they're had an out-of-body experience and they traveled through time and space outside of their body, but they just said it. Doesn't mean that you have to believe it. And by that, I mean, belief doesn't require evidence. You can just believe something to be true, but you can't demonstrate how it's true without evidence. And this is the part of the book where Van Helsing really moves from, or where we really understand that he's not really a scientist. He's an occult detective, is what he is. That he is an occultist. That's what he does in life. He applies some scientific methods of investigation, but at the end of the day, he's an occultist. He talks about, we all know, because science has vouched for the fact that toads have been shut up in rocks for thousands of years. The people have been Indian faker who can make himself die and be buried in his grave. Like, that was all not true. Like, none of this stuff he's talking about is true.
Les Klinger has a note where he jokes that it sounds like Van Helsing was a subscriber to Weekly World News.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Bat Boy and everything. Van Helsing believes everything. And it seems like what he's saying is, I believe it because someone said it, and because I can't disprove it, then it must be true. It's like ridiculous. And he says, and then Seward responds, "Professor, let me be your pet student again. Tell me the thesis so that I may apply your knowledge as you go on. At present, I am going in my mind from point to point as a madman, and not a sane one follows an idea." And Seward's still trying to approach it like a scientist. Like, show me the data, and let's put together the thesis. And Van Helsing's response is, "My thesis is this. I want you to believe." Now, if you're a scientist, you're going to run screaming from the room at that point. Because Van Helsing, to believe in what? To believe in things that you cannot. Let me illustrate. I heard once of an American who so defined faith. And he's talking about faith as being the believe what's not true, believe what you can't prove, you know, or what you know to be untrue. But it's really like, if you can't know that it's true, but you still believe in it, that's called faith. For one, I follow that man, Van Helsing says. So you're not a scientist. Like, it's this weird thing that goes on. All the arguments that Van Helsing makes here are, and what's crazy now is people still do this to argue the validity of their believing in something, even though there's no actual evidence to believe in it. And what I love about this is that, and for the world of this novel, Van Helsing is a scientist because the supernatural evidence is actually in the novel, you know, like it is part of the natural world. You know, that's the trick of this novel, is that Stoker has married this occult belief and science and given us the evidence. We've seen Dracula. We've seen what happened to Lucy. The evidence is actually there. So actually, you don't even need to go through all these like crazy stuff. He doesn't need to say to Seward, like, well, you have to believe that the spider can live for hundreds of years drinking the oil from, you know, a lamp in a church tower. You don't need to believe that, because Lucy was preyed upon by a vampire who sucked the blood out of her neck and then kept coming back, and now she's going to come back alive. I mean, there's evidence there already for it. So before Van Helsing, in this novel, science only exists to vouch for facts. That's what he says. He says, you know, that science needs to vouch for facts. And if, you know, that's the point of science for him. And obviously that's not the point of science. And we're dealing with a novel that has a supernatural creature that, you know, they all need to go fight. And that's really what's going on.
We skipped over a weird line.
Go ahead.
He talks about how if Lucy could have lived even just one more day, they probably could have saved her. And they never explain what he means by that. Like, how does he think he could have saved her if he had just one more day?
If we had one more day where you didn't leave her damn bedside, maybe that is true. Because
in my mind, I think because now he has the evidence from the Harkers that he thinks he knows now how he could have saved her, but he wouldn't have gotten that evidence if she didn't die. So that's how I think he's thinking, but it wouldn't have been even if she would have lived.
Yeah, because he did have enough information. Like, he didn't know it was Dracula, but he does know that there is a vampire who's visiting Lucy at night. And he tries to set things up where she's protected at night, but he never goes the full thing, which is just to be there, you know, that you just have to be there every night. And if you need something from somewhere else, you need to really make sure that Jonathan doesn't leave the room, go to sleep, mom doesn't come in and take the garlic away. You know, like, you really needed to seal it off to really protect her. Or you needed to get her out of the goddamn house. How about that? How about she needs to go somewhere else for a few days where we can have a full guard put on her overnight. So yeah, it's you know, one more day wasn't going to help him. One more effort of something else would have helped, I think. So anyway, but Van Helsing, again, it's because of who he is and who this character is here. I think at the end of this chapter, we really need to understand that he's not so much a scientist or a detective or anything like that. He's an occultist in a sense, but I think for this novel, he's their priest. He's the priest in the novel that has this religious conviction, knowledge of rituals to you know, achieve whatever you need to do in this religious system, and he is that mentor teacher figure that is going to lead the flock to overcome evil, and that's fully established now that that's who he is. He gets to be a scientist in this novel because this stuff is actually happening in the novel. Like, there is actually a vampire who bites people and then they transform into a vampire. So, you know, it is fascinating how now that has to, like, you have to make that a real concept almost always in vampire films or books now, especially if you set them in the present day. That has to be explained away. You have to explain the science of vampirism now. That starts with Richard Matheson and I Am Legend, and it continues now to all new stuff. And The Strain is the most, the newest, or the most more, or maybe V Wars was the most, the newest one, where Jonathan Mayberry V Wars, and it's a prion in the brain that's makes you a vampire, or prion. I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, but here it is just, it's the supernatural thing that actually exists. So he can still be a scientist, and he takes Jonathan through this, right? And then Jonathan's like, what the hell, would you explain to me, please, what is going on with this, these accounts of the Bloofer lady? And Van Helsing give the final line of the chapter, the marks in the neck. What is going on here?
They were made by Miss Lucy.
That's it. They were, she's actually the one that has been preying upon these children. Now, it's a fun little reveal at the end of the chapter, and it's a nice moment. It's a nice way to do end of chapters here, but I find it hard to believe any early readers of this, even first readers of this, didn't know what was going on, that this is Lucy is the Bloofer lady. It's been heavy-handed in how she's turning into a vampire, and everybody running around not understanding, but not that that effect is a bad thing, because I think as a reader, when you understand something, you love seeing what you understand validated. And this is that moment that happens where, like, yeah, I knew it. It is her. So, especially for his early readers, it's a nice moment of validation for characters. Big reveal, right?
I love that it took this long for Seward to just finally, what are you talking about?
Please, for God's sakes, just tell me something, because he's not going to get there. And Van Helsing has worked so hard.
And it takes him 2 times of asking to actually get the answer.
So he knows now, and that's what we'll have to deal with in the next chapter, right? Yeah. Well, Dracuphiles, thank you all for tuning in today, or if you're watching this on a replay, thank you so much. We will post this recording on our website, and we also have a Sundays with Dracula Facebook group where we can continue the conversation. You look us up on Facebook, join in that conversation. I'm always available to answer questions via email. Next week's co-host joining me would normally have been Josh Hitchens in our rotation of co-hosts, but Josh needed to switch dates. So next week, our friends from over the pond at Sheffield Gothic, Mary Going and Lauren Nixon, will be here for Chapter 15, and then Josh Hitchens will be the co-host on the show on August 23rd, when David Scull is our special guest. Don't forget to join me tomorrow night for our first episode of Monday Drac Chat. I hope most of the people who are in the chat today will join me and Lee Price talking about what you guys talked about in the chat today, and any new ideas that Lee or myself might come up with about this chapter that we weren't able to talk about today or didn't talk about today. Remember to register for Monday Drac Chat ahead of time. It's not the same link that you get for Sundays with Dracula. And it is also members and Rosenbach members and Dracula Club members only. So you can only watch it on Zoom, as it airs at 6:30 p.m. EST on Monday nights, every Monday night from now until we're done with this show. There's not only Sundays with Dracula for 2+ hours on Sunday, now also on Monday evening. That's when the after show will be. If you are looking for more virtual engagement in our quarantine world, head on over to the Rosenbach website. Check out all the virtual offerings we have. If you become a member of the Dracula Club, I would be more grateful than Van Helsing, who just happens to have lunch with a woman and discovers her husband knows the vampire he's looking for. So, Tucker, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Ed. I'll see you
Awesome.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. You'll see me tomorrow. Yeah, you'll see me tomorrow on Drac Chat. Join us next week on Sundays with Dracula for chapter 15, when Dracula. I'm sorry, for chapter 15, when Dr. Seward and Van Helsing break into the tomb of Lucy and drip sperm all over her coffin. I swear to God, that's actually what happens. You heard that right. I'm not making that up. They drip sperm all over her coffin. Join us next week to find out what that means. Once again, we'll be played out by Tucker Christine, our musical director's Pleated Gazelle song, Storm at Whitby. Farewell, everyone. And in the words of our friend Dracula, go safely and leave something of the happiness you bring. Farewell, everyone. Bye-bye.